Just a fair warning, guys. I've been growing my hair out. I haven't been, had a haircut in a while, so bear with us.
You look different. You look
Yeah.
different. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Lioneye Watch. Join us around the fire, as tonight we are discussing our early experiences with Breach League, and we're going over the patch notes. And with me, I have my two co-hosts, Hedgie and PT. What have you been up to, Hedgie?
I've been hanging out with family members, and I've been trying to play as much Path of Exile as I can. I loved the start, and I don't want to miss it, so been sacrificing a lot of sleep, and currently playing my Slayer, and my goal is to kill the Shaper with my staff. That'll be my first kill.
Okay. What about you, PT?
At this point in time, I've just been leveling 2 characters to Merciless difficulty now. I have to get a Lab Farmer and then, unfortunately, tons of Flame Blast until I can play Detonate Dead. So, try not to die in breaches. So far, so good.
Mm-hmm. So what are the builds you guys are playing right now? Hedgie?
I'm playing double strike with sweep. So it's a leap sweeping action for AoE.
You really like that sweep.
Oh yeah, man, it's good. It's like perfect for the breach, man. It's like everything is 360 degrees surround you and like bombard you with a bunch of shit. And with the knockback, that keeps me safe. And the 360, great AoE.
You're not in Cruel yet, right?
No, I'm in Cruel. Yeah.
Okay.
I did all the breaches in Cruel, and they were easy, except for the one with the ball lightning shit.
I'm just expecting that leap to end in death once you get a little bit higher. Just leap dead. Oh, cute. No sweep in between.
What about you,
Wow,
PT?
is that fast?
They get pretty rippy, actually.
They swarm you insanely fast. What about you, PT?
Unfortunately, for my Lab Farmer, I'm just doing Blade Flurry, generic, strong thing that I can stack a whole bunch of defenses on. And then...
How do you like it so far? Blade Flurry, you talked a lot about that before.
Yeah, I'd never actually played the nerfed version. The area of effect was reduced a little bit. We'll go over the patch notes and then the damage. But it's still incredibly powerful for leveling. Just popped it on a Slayer and it's carrying me.
What kind of Blade Flurry is it? Like poison-based, elemental?
I'm actually doing just like this really terrible Fizz RT one. All I want to do is stay on the left side of the tree, stack the endurance charges so that I don't have to worry about Izero, building it essentially like a lab farming earthquake build. And I think it'll just do a bit more damage because it does a bit more damage.
You'll get enough attack speed that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I'm playing dual flame totem. Well, I'm actually gonna, when I have the right gear, it's gonna be a quadruple flame totem. I'll be using the new shield, so I get one more totem. I'll have one Searing Bond, and then of course 2 from Ancestral Bond, and I'm going crit as well. And the goal is to farm Uberlap with that. I tried just today, very very early. I have all the trials and all that stuff, but the damage is not really there yet, and I still have like 4,600 lives, so it's very rippy. But when going Chieftain, and it was my goal from the beginning, I wanted something with Chieftain because that taunt is just so insane, especially on a Flame Totem, because all of the rapid hits, the bosses are constantly taunted. It's so fucking nice. And then with the Searing Bond, you have that burn effect, so you still get that power bonus from all your ascendancies, even with elemental focus. Yeah.
I like how you tied in that one Searing Bond just to get them to all connect. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Getting some bonus damage there.
Yeah, and it allows you to use that elemental focus because otherwise you wouldn't be able to apply those status ailments and then benefit from the increased burning damage. So, but
now with your build, are you finding that it's struggling a little bit against the breach mechanic because it's so swarmy?
I now that I'm starting to pick up on the damage, I think it's doing all right. But I'm not really playing with faster projectiles, so the range of the totems aren't that good. So I'm feeling that it's not killing fast enough, but it's starting to pick up. So.
Okay.
What's your gem level currently?
17. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably it then.
Yeah. It's with the gem levels. higher, it should be completely fine. Also, it is a crit build, right? So I haven't really gotten started with the crit to scale it properly yet. So, but I like it. I think it's a solid one to go for Uberlab with, and it's super budget. But I'm really looking forward to trying out that new shield, Tokuhama's Fortress. You also get 300 armor per active totem. So with 4 totems, that gives quite a lot of armor, right? And then you have the Ascendancy that makes it so that your totems get 50% of your character's armor. So they just become very, very tanky. And we're actually going to talk a bit more about totem defenses and resistances later when we talk about the patch notes.
So let's go ahead and dive into that. This is just going to be a preliminary, overview of some of the changes that we saw with the balance notes. It came out a week ago, but we didn't have a podcast in between. So we're going to go ahead and discuss some of the more interesting ones today, starting with the melee targeting. And from my experience with with double strike and shift attacking, I always hold shift. I like having the option of being able to name lock when I want to, because if I'm encountering 3 monsters, one of them is a rare, I want to make sure that I'm able to focus the big boy, right? And I can just ignore the other ones until the rare is dead. So I really like the ease of use, and I'm definitely noticing it. But that, with the weapon enhancement, the range getting boosted to 11 across the board with all 2-handers, I think it's kind of cool. But at the same time, it kind of takes away some of the identity, which is what I worry. Axes are no longer the best go-to Cyclone weapon, but if you get the At Sirius's Favor, you get the +2 weapon range, and then you're king again. So I guess there's some of that. But very, very, very good change. I don't hate myself playing melee with a single target skill. So it's a step in the right direction. Can definitely see some improvements. Daggers got bumped down to 8. You see a lot of one-handed weapons are just 9, and then everything else seems to be like 11.
It's foils right now that has the largest range, isn't it?
Yeah, they have
foils.
12.
Yeah. Is that does it have anything to do with if you're dual wielding or not? Does that make any difference?
No.
Okay.
Dual wielding doesn't have any difference.
Okay. Thematically, it would make sense cycloning around, right?
Did you find that at least the weapon range is going to be enough of a quality of life improvement to make more people try, or is it a novelty change that is beneficial, but realistically people are just going to be like, okay, that's nice, moving on?
I mean, there is some of that. With 2-handers, it's nice because you always have the option of getting 2 6-links. You can have something that's more focused towards AoE and then one that's single target. You still get kind of boned if you're using 1-handers, because you can only have 1 6-link, and they're going to need to significantly ramp up the damage on some of the single target skills in order for people to justify using them, or maybe even using them in a 4-link setup, with a one-handed shield, sword, and board, or dual wield build. But as far as the state of 2-handers and the weapon range, it's good. It could still use some love for the one-handed weapons.
Is it too much in any of the cases you've seen or tried so far?
No, I mean, I don't feel like it's too much.
Okay.
But then I haven't tried like Frostblades. Frostblades has like 15 weapon range, and then you add the base on top of that. So it's like, I wonder how far you can actually shoot. It must be pretty nice, and probably makes your character feel more like a ranged character than anything. But
So we've also had some seen a change where reduced damage of the bosses in the overgrown ruin map. Have you noticed that, had you?
Oh man, it's like a patch too late. I was like, I spent so much time ripping there, and I mean, it's kind of like, going into the unknown. You just don't know what the hell's gonna give you. And I've made pretty tanky, well-rounded characters, put a lot of time into it, and it's like I die to something, and then a couple of patches later, I see GGG nerfs it and into the ground. And you saw Calria the Risen, and then they're like, okay, maybe these guys are a bit overtuned.
The thing you died to, though, that was the Detonate Dead Rights.
Well, that was
which
died
was
to the
changed
Spectral
sometime.
Throw, Storm Call.
The Spectral Throw, and it's like a tri-Ellie Spectral Storm Call. Yeah, it's fucking devastating. I
super
underestimated
chaotic
it.
in there.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that it was nerfed though? Like it was challenging content. The content wasn't doable. Are you happy that it was nerfed, or would you have preferred it stayed in its more difficult form?
I actually prefer it, to be difficult, but when you compare it to other maps, it's like on another tier. So I think there's an imbalance there. So either bump up the other bosses in the other tier 15s to something, of that magnitude, or nerf it, bring it more in line with the other maps. It's just that map is on its own level of difficulty, and I think that's not very good.
Now that we're
Yeah,
talking
that
about
does
the
make sense.
tier 15 map bosses, am I the only one who thinks that they are kind of a joke? Like, they're so easy to deal with almost any of them. What have your guys' experiences been here?
Yeah,
The
with
last
Rigvall.
time,
Yeah,
well, the last
like just
time
in
I-
general, any tier 15 map boss at the moment. Go ahead, PT.
I was going to say the last time I ended up just farming the tier 15 from Abyss to farm Steel Rings, so I didn't try out the other ones, but I know Malachi had his damage reduced, and Duresso wasn't even that hard before. They didn't buff him, so...
Yeah. I've been doing Twin Duresso, Twin Abyss, Twin Core with ease in the last league. And obviously I've been playing some OP skills as well, so that of course has something to do with it, but to me it feels kind of lame that the difficulty of the tier 15 map bosses right now are at that stage. And especially because the leap from tier 15s to a Guardian is there's quite a big difference. But then again, the Guardians are supposed to be tough. So.
Yeah. I think it's okay for them to be tough because they're pretty rare too, and they're very thematic, and they have their own loot tables, so there's some of that. But yeah, I mean, handling the dual Rigvall, it's very, very doable, and it's a whole nother ball. Like twinned Rigvall doesn't even compare to a regular overgrown ruin. It's just you have such a small space, and I would like to see more challenge with real estate or items in the room. I'm not talking about pebbles or pixels that you trip over. I'm just talking about like interesting pillar design, narrow hallways, open areas.
Yeah.
Just people have more strategy when they're encountering these things. And
forcing you out of that comfort zone.
Yeah. Putting pressure on the player to really make use of the room.
Yeah.
That's why I really liked when they introduced Plaza Boss, because there's some room mechanics that you have to play around with a little bit more.
Yeah.
But they definitely don't utilize that as much as they could.
One thing I'm happy to see they've changed as well is in the skill tree, and these are among the minor skill tree changes we've gotten. Totems have received a bit of love. We have gotten more physical damage reduction, elemental resistances. We have gotten buffs to the physical damage, attack, and cast speed too. And I think the total amount, when you look at the skill tree with all the totem nodes, I think it's around 20 to 25%. I think it says that in the patch notes too. But it makes it, even though it doesn't sound like too much, that a single node gets like 4% extra damage, it really does make it so that the totem nodes have gotten more interesting to pick up again, because when you did a totem build before, a lot of the totem nodes, you were kind of inclined not to pick them up, especially if it was just for damage, because you could pick up more effective crit nodes or multiplier nodes or maybe elemental nodes or something like that. There was a few notables you would pick up because of totem speed, the summon speed, right?
Yeah, the placement speed.
Yeah, placement speed. And but I think with this change, it's now gotten at least more interesting. With the totem build I'm playing right now, I've gotten, I think, probably 16% more damage than I wouldn't have had before, and that definitely makes me pick up some of the new totem nodes that I otherwise wouldn't.
Which wheel did you end up taking that you didn't take or wouldn't have taken previously?
Ironwood. Okay. I would have picked up that. There is also Totemic Mastery now, where it is more of a choice whether or not you'll have to pick up the defensive route into Totemic Mastery or the offensive route, which now gives much more attack and cast speed. Previously, I think it was like 2% and 3% cast speed it would give or something like that. So it really didn't feel good. But I like that. Definitely a nice change.
Yeah, I like how it's pretty flexible and in that it's like global totem damage. So whether it's burn or it can scale with poison. It gives you more options to build a totem character and make it more rewarding.
I mean, it should also feel when you're playing a totem build, you should be excited to seek out the totem nodes in the skill tree, right? Instead of just thinking I'm just picking Ancestral Bond and then whatever other damage node I can pick up. So I think it's good. I think it's more interesting that way. But we've also seen like this general increase to the resistances on the skill gems, but we'll cover that as we continue.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you with, since you probably have the most experience with totems, you and PT, but all these defenses that are coming towards totems, the ability to run a reflect map, is that a thing now? Because last time I ran a totem build and I was using Shockwave with crit, anytime I ran into Fizz Reflect, they just give themselves, and it was so annoying. Just spawn a totem, it kills itself. Spawn a totem, it kills itself because the damage.
I don't think that's going to change. I don't think that's going to change. It's going to be
especially when you have a huge amount of enemies.
Yeah, and if we take a look at something like Siege Ballista, which gains so much physical damage, to scale it that way with the weapon, it's not going to be enough. So reflect maps is not going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference against bosses, and maybe a small amount against regular monsters, but it is going to be from those very hard-hitting enemies that you see the biggest difference, I think.
When they first did the patch notes and they were like, oh, there's a whole bunch of totem resists and totem life and totem armor, I was just kind of like, wait, totems needed a buff? Totems are pretty fucking good right now. And then I'm just like, okay, now we go into Breach and I'm seeing all the elemental damage just from everything. I'm like, yeah, I see why this buff came.
There was some people, though, complaining about, with the on-click mechanics like essences, Perandus mobs, and that kind of stuff, that the totems simply got swarmed too fast, that they were too squishy. But that's both elemental and physical damage reduction. But yeah, absolutely with the Breach.
Similar stuff.
Yeah, like Breach, holy fuck. It's
Yeah.
That's the biggest swarm fest ever.
I like it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. Maybe we should just quickly. Do you like the Breaches so far? Do you have fun with them?
Yeah. I like when I feel pressure, when I'm making meaningful decisions and trying to avoid certain monsters or certain areas, and it gets a little clusterfucky, not with my own skills, but with what, the monster activity.
Yeah.
It's more mentally stimulating, less TV meta.
You don't watch TV in the Breach, that's for sure.
I was originally worried because on paper, it didn't sound like a very interesting mechanic, because it was like, okay, Elrion quests. You touch a thing, mob spawn, kill mobs, move on. But they made the breaches really challenging.
Yeah.
In normal, they were challenging enough that they would compare or check your resistances really well, but you were fine, as long as you could distribute your damage, hit a whole bunch of enemies. As soon as I jumped into Cruel, they can combo you, and you have to watch the fuck out. The only thing is those invisible mobs. So I've been enjoying it a lot more than I expected, and most of it is just the launch was smooth, the mobs are polished if we ignore the invisible mobs when they're attacking you, and they keep you on your toes, and they're challenging. So that's nice to see again.
They were very generous with the pack size.
Yeah, very generous with the pack size. It's
the worst thing is that it's so random. Some of the times you open a breach and you have like a good 2 seconds, and then the mobs flood in and you can get swamped. Then you're good. Other times you click the hand, it opens up, and there's immediately 30, and you're like, what the fuck?
What's the fucking system here? What do you guys think about the drop rate of items in the breach? Have you noticed anything that makes it feel different than killing random mobs?
There's definitely a lot more mobs. One of the maybe menial things that mattered a lot at the start, there was a lot, and still is a lot, of wisdom scrolls and portal scrolls. Like absurd amount that dropped from those mobs. And
also the kind of low tier currency, I feel. Like up until alchemy orbs almost.
Even the small little things like the items dropping identified, that's like pretty cool. And just wanting to mouse over that, and do I want to pick it up, or like you get excited, you just want to like, oh man, I have like 6 more mobs, and I want to pick up this jewel or this ring that's a breach ring.
It also that the breach just makes you embrace that YOLO mentality, because you're seeing those hands popping up from the ground and you're getting swarmed by 80 monsters already, but I need to click the fucking hand. What if there's 2 additional wisdom scrolls in there? I need it. And then you jump in there, you die, and it's not worth it. But it's fun. Like, they've really managed to bring that out with the breaches.
I don't think I've ever opened a hand that's rewarding, yet I still always want to open the hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're just like, what? It's purple. It's got to be good. That's what we've been trained to think. But
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys have a concern that the breach might force people, or like make people feel forced to play good area skills and things like Scorching Ray? I was really excited about Scorching Ray beforehand, but I'm like, there's no way.
Doing Scorching Ray.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way I would want to play this skill in this type of league. Just trying to spin around and do circles while you're just getting swarmed.
You just need to use cast when channeling, bro. With
I
fucking
didn't get the memo.
Firestorm or something like that.
I'm wanting to gear up one of my characters because all I'm reading the entire time was like Val Cyclone.
Yeah.
Because it will pull everything to you, kill it all. It's going to be so much fun.
That would be hilarious.
It is. I did remember when we talked to Rory about the design, and I brought up the question about, how is this going to be punishing jank, and he kind of made an answer that they were trying to make sure it doesn't. I'm sorry, this league punishes the fuck out of jank. The commander mobs have a lot of life, more than essence mob amount of life. Mm-hmm. And if you can't handle them and you start to get like 2 or 3 of them, you can't deal with the breach anymore.
Yeah, and I like that time trial. Like when I encountered the commander and I didn't kill him by like 20%, you know what happened? I was like, oh man, that feels bad. I spent all that time and I didn't kill him, and the breach closed. It made me go port to town and like slap on more links to my single target, and I actually cared more, and I spent more additional time optimizing that I wouldn't normally. I just steamroll all the way to Merciless Docks and just start farming.
Yeah, that's a cool design that it makes you want to do that. Put in the effort. Yeah. But to be fair though, Rory also said that we shouldn't expect in the beginning of the league, when we don't have a good gear or anything like that, then we probably should expect not to be able to keep up the breaches and kill the breach lords. He said that on the podcast, as far as I remember. So yeah, I definitely think that maybe in a week so, when we have gear, then it will be a different story.
It's just one of the situations where if you were trying to try some, like let's say you wanted to play Blight or some name lock skills, it's going to suck at least the first week, unless you're buying gear. Mm-hmm. Other than that, though, the actual mechanics of it, it's smooth. One of the really interesting details, there's a lot of small polish things that I appreciate because it feels like it was a much higher quality, even if the idea isn't, insanely creative. Like the purple swirls actually direct you to it. They use the same swirl mechanics that appears when you're in the Val zones, but they direct you to the hands, and I thought that was just a very subtle, nice touch.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, if you see the purple, just follow the purple, and it'll bring you right to the hand.
Oh, cool. I didn't notice that.
One thing that I kind of wish was the area, the radius at which you stand next to the original hand that spawns the breach. I feel like that could have been a little bit bigger. You can literally stand next to it without having it go off. And I kind of like the idea of, a breach spawning in a hallway and you're like, oh shit, I'm going to have to proc this. And what is my game plan going forward? Because this is a rippy map. Mm-hmm. But
that just made me think of an idea. Imagine the breaches moved very slowly towards you, and so you tag you.
Dude, that'd be amazing. That's an amazing idea.
Maybe that's the next league.
This is
I just want
a popular opinion.
I'm sad that I'm so self-owned because I want to PK someone with Val Breach.
I guess. Oh, do we know does it spawn monsters at the same level of the zone, or how does it work?
I didn't check the eye level of loot that drops, so I don't know if it's like zone +1. I assume the white mobs are zone, the yellow mobs are zone +2, blue mobs are zone +1, like normal moves.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, let's
item. Yeah.
yeah, let's
ahead.
go on through the rest of the patch notes. Bleeding has been updated to be affected by duration, and I think bleed is kind of unpopular, mainly because of the fact that you don't get rewarded by getting multiple bleeds. So I'm not saying that I want it to change where you can stack bleeds. I'm just saying bleed is interesting because it makes you play a certain way, focus on heavy hitting, not necessarily quantity of hits. But yeah, it's a step in the right direction. Do you guys think it's where it needs to be after that change, or?
I still think there is an issue with creating builds that fully utilize bleed that isn't just a poison build. And
I feel
yeah, go
I
ahead.
feel like bleed is more of like a prerequisite to do some cooler things instead of like actually focus on the bleed.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have the assassin, the gladiator. Once you establish your bleed, you get secondary effects that kind of multiply damage and give you other benefits. But as far as a very meaningful, potent bleed, the last time I saw a really awesome one was when people were getting that super uber harbinger and farming uber Atziri with puncture trap and point blank and using that bleed, but that got nerfed into the ground. And yeah, it's kind of like I haven't really seen an interesting bleed focused build in a while.
I think when you had the issue where they introduced poison, and poison is essentially a better bleed with more stacking sources that stacks.
Yeah.
They took the unique flavor of bleed, made it better, gave it to everybody, including spells, and then said, fuck you, bleed. Now you still got you still have bloodlust, and you, like you said, the explosions. Like there is puncture, and puncture bows can do something, but bleed lost its flavor when they made poison.
I think there is the issue of so many monsters being, or not some bosses being immune to bleed as well, and then the fact that in order for bleed to really deal the full potential damage, they need to have monsters that are moving around. And since knockback or creatures are immune to knockback as well, it's kind of hard to really get that full power of bleed sometimes, especially against bosses.
And then it doesn't stack, so it's just
exactly.
like, well, I could have just attacked again.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's some diamond supporter or unique creator supporter that's pushing for a stacking bleed, but I kind of don't want to see a stacking bleed because then everything can literally stack. You get Amber Wake Ignites, poison, and I don't know. I want things to have their unique identity, but at the same time a different reward. And right now bleed is going to suffer from like not being able to achieve such great AoE. Maybe the chance to flee, there's an opportunity there. Maybe put something on.
Moving on. No chance to flee.
Chance to flee.
Right, PT hates to flee. All right, PT, you got the next nerf.
Point. Yeah, so then Cosprey's and Mjolnir were changed to 250 milliseconds up from 100 milliseconds, and that made a lot of people upset for some obvious reasons. Now, Cosprey's made a little bit more sense because it can slow down your ability to literally shield charge through a map. Yeah, it sucks for the people who weren't doing that, but Cosprey's is fantastic. It can handle the nerf. It's still a strong build. Now, Mjolnir, though, I wasn't aware of a particularly impressive Mjolnir build that was abusing the 100 milliseconds internal cooldown, and I wonder if they just put it to 250 for the sake of normalization.
That was what I was thinking too, because exactly like you, I was thinking Mjolnir does not need this. Mjolnir at this point in time already feels like you need to put in a lot of investment to really make it worth that top tier 1 unique, make it worth it. So I guess maybe there's someone out there who's made like a super janky build that just completely trivializes everything, but
yeah, I mean, it struggles in our current competitive meta where AoE just shines, and when you have better options, especially like more expensive ones, it kind of pulls you away from the Mjolnir. But I have a feeling after the second Mjolnir change, that's not going to be the last one. They're probably going to have to buff it again to incentivize people to use it. But I wonder how the supporters feel about this. They get their uniques nerfed, and it's a very bold move. And I commend GGG for trying to resolve some balance issues and not just ignore it.
Yeah, if it is just for the sake of normalization, they've done this to Mjolnir, then it's kind of that's a little undeserved. That's a little lazy, if you know what I mean. And I mean no offense by that, but still.
Well, what my concern is, they're shoving whenever there's something maybe a little bit abusable. There's this new habit of shoving these eternal cooldown or internal cooldowns on things, and one of the things where I liked about the original game was about trying to spam a skill potentially or work around using that one thing, and now just getting these cooldowns here and there it's a little bit weird, especially that they're not stated.
I think it has something to do with performance too, and on that note, we've also seen that they've reduced the number of SRS and that kind of stuff to have a max of 20 right now. Which we'll talk about. But I think we've seen so many changes with Blade Vortex stacks and all that stuff. I think it's simply just to make the game more stable as well. I'm no technician. I don't know how it works, but
I think it's two birds, one stone, right? You're achieving two different things. You're bringing balance more in line and also improving server performance. So it's a win-win, except for the people that are in love with the build and live for the build. They're probably very, very upset, as we saw thousands of posts on Reddit and stuff.
Every time something's getting nerfed, though, that's kind of the mentality of it. Someone's going to get sad.
You have to make unpopular decisions, to better your game.
Good.
For the greater good. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of unpopular decisions, Hedgie, there's a unique.
Yeah, the Roomies nerf. I was like, holy shit! They are paying attention. When they see this thing equipped on almost every person that can use it, it's amazing. The new max is 20, down from 30, and the new spell block max is down to 10, from 15. And that's a significant change, because when you have things that increase the flask effectiveness, you're now increasing it by a smaller, from a smaller base number. What do you guys think about this change? Is it still valuable? Is it still worth a flask slot on your bar?
Oh, it's definitely worth a flask slot, especially if you're going to be using curse effectiveness. That's a lot of mitigation to have, and it's on a granite flask. There's also two new uniques that scale with block quite nicely. And if you would want to take block passives, it's still the most efficient way to get block by a hilarious margin. People want to play those style of builds. I'm glad it was nerfed. It's been such a dominant flask for such a long time. If anything, was a little bit odd that some of the other flasks weren't nerfed alongside it.
Yeah, it kind of gives more specialization flavor to the Gladiator. Now the Gladiator is your token black, token block guy. Wow. And you don't have the Pathfinder doing what you're doing or what your whole Ascendancy aspires to do. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Take it back. Delete it from the bot.
All right, welcome.
All right, next nerf. PT, would you like to introduce this one?
All right, the Grand Spectrum Jewel. It was reduced to 4%, and we're kind of curious if it's still worth it. Will it retain its value? You're going to have 4 jewels being 64% elemental damage versus 80, and if you're at 9 jewels, you're going to be at 324% elemental damage versus 405. So the people who are going to push this past generally 10 jewels, which is where you want it, the 10, 11, 12, you're losing a fairly huge magnitude.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you need to go to those numbers to make it worthwhile. Now, the lower limit has been moved to.
Yeah, my question is it still gonna retain its value? Do you guys think it's still gonna be, super expensive, or the price is gonna go down because people are gonna be like, I can't really make this worth it anymore for the cost?
I think initially it's going to drop down just because every time thing was nerfed, everyone abandoned ship. Then eventually someone's like, "Hey, look, I can one-shot X."
Yeah.
That's
Sorry.
still
Yeah.
double dip burning.
I would definitely agree with that. It'll be like a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, it must be bad. But then they're like, they see a couple videos. They're like, hey, I'm still using 10 grand spectrums and face rolling content. Look at me go, you know?
But I mean, if you have 9 jewels and you get 324 elemental damage, if you compare that to having 9 jewels with lots of crit multiplier on or flats, whatever, then, you know, it's definitely more in tune with what 9 other jewels can provide, right? Not numerically, but in practicality.
One thing that protects its cost is that, unlike, let's say, Victor's cost, where everybody playing Victor's creates its cost, you only need 7 people who want to play Grand Spectrum, and each of those 7 people need, 10 to 14 Grand Spectrum jewels. That small amount of people now actually has a huge amount of desired uniques. Imagine the cost of shabs if you needed 12 shabs to play your shabs build.
Yeah.
So due to the mechanic of that jewel, it's going to allow it so that even with a significantly smaller demand, it will probably keep a pretty penny once we get maybe to the second month of the league.
Yeah.
Probably.
Going with the next interesting one, and I found this one to be the most interesting. Neuro's Harp has an additional property, which is 40% increased effect of Chilled Ground. Now, Chilled Ground already slows your attack, cast, and movement speed. And I think this is the first time we've seen this special mod, as an extra way to enhance an already existing property in the game. The only exception I can think of is maybe with Devotion and Arctic Armor, because Devotion gives you 3% increased buffs, or increased, quality of your buffs. What do you guys think about this? And how do you guys feel about it?
This change here, when people initially look at it, they're probably like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, right.
Well, this is not going to change anything when I run around with it, but it's gonna be good for groups. It's gonna be good for support builds. If you have a strong support that maybe already casts some temp chains or have some slow mechanics, then it's gonna stack up. It's gonna be noticeable. But I think that's the intention behind it.
It definitely makes sense of the intention. I remember when they first disclosed that bow, and they were like, yeah, this is for, some support chilling. And I was just like, oh, so it's immediately trash tier because all it does is chill and Ice Shot exists. Well done. Mm-hmm. So there's a point, and that's an improvement.
Yeah, it now makes that mechanic stronger.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, when I was making a Guardian, and I was using, I was basically wanting to use the Neuros, but I kept looking at the Quill Rain. I'm like, well, what do I value more? I could still Ice Shot with the Quill Rain and get the chill, and so this thing doesn't really become that special. And as a support character, you're pretty much going to forego your DPS and your ability to scale damage for the sake of the group and scaling auras and defenses. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, well, that kind of takes the flavor out, because I wanted to use Neuro's Harp, but I couldn't justify its use over awesome properties that Quill Rain offered, mainly the insane attack speed, allowing you to spam projectile speed, getting contact on the mobs quicker, and then you get dex. It's just like, it's all the things that I prefer. But now that this mod exists, I know it's going to be a better Quill Rain, or at least a different one.
Well, there's also Reach of the Council, which allows you to drop the LMP GMP, hit more enemies, which then can free up Curse on Hit. So it has some steep competition. I guess my concern is, if you are temp chained, quality temp chained, and also Ice Shotted, are you going to notice that difference? Is that difference really going to be meaningful?
I mean, we'll see. It may go down to that speed where Gudo was running that Gorge map. You're pretty much at a standstill.
Well, actually, that was one of the aspects that I thought was odd. They've had many issues in the past allowing players to get too much movement speed control of enemy mobs, and reintroducing some of it seems not like the greatest idea.
But it's on a janky bow, so I think it's kind of safe. I mean, it's not something you can pick up on any global unique,
No.
But
No, I don't see it breaking anything. It's just
Yeah.
worried about the design space they create when they do stuff like that. Can easily put themselves in a corner or prevent their ability to do another interesting unique. Because then with Naru's Harp, congratulations, 100% standstill.
Yeah.
I
And then
actually
we
think
have
it is an interesting unique note that now though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
has
yeah.
a point.
So
Yeah. And speaking of bows, we have a quiver, Soul Strike, 80% faster energy shield charge, down from 150. Um, Good change, bad change. What do you guys think?
I never
Well,
used it, but it makes sense. I never
Yeah,
used it for
I
my own build.
I agree.
yeah.
It, you do have to keep in mind that the meaningful numbers, chances are before you could go down to like a 0.5 second energy shield recharge recovery, and now with the quiver you would go all the way up to like I think just about a 1 second.
Mhm.
So it's not a huge period of time. It's significant, but not game breaking. The other thing
Yeah.
was Soul Strike was originally balanced when the energy shield recharge start, and then the time for the recharge were flipped. Because
Yeah.
it used to be it was 6 seconds you had to not take damage before
Mhm.
recharge would activate, not 3. And that's when the
Right.
quiver was made. They should have nerfed this quiver when they flipped it.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely warranted. One of my favorite forms of defense when you can't leech is energy shield recharge. You see the essence surge wheel, and then you get all the utility nodes next to nullification, and under that, and then there's some in the witch. I definitely like getting a meaningful amount to where it feels good. When you escape combat, it only takes a split second until your energy shield starts recharging at a very good rate, and it allows the option for you to play a non-leech build, whether it's SRS or Trapper or whatever. But it's very cool.
I'm going to
Like
use
that.
it if I acquire it, so I still think it's good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those are some of the interesting, unique changes, and some of the general changes. But we're going to talk about some of the skill adjustments, and going to start off with Blade Flurry.
So
A Blade
the Blade
Vortex.
Flurry, Blade Vortex, actually on that one.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Blade Vortex. Sorry.
Too many blades, too many vortexes, can't keep up.
Yeah.
So Blade Vortex, which was one that a lot of people were keeping an eye out. The skill is now a base hit frequency of 600 milliseconds and has a 10% increased hit rate per active blade. Its damage has been reduced by 30% at all levels, and it deals 30% more damage per active blade. So it's got a mechanical nerf in terms of hit per seconds, obviously. Now, but a damage increase. So it should be about 22.5% maximum damage at maximum stacks.
Mhm.
You're going to beat the old average at 13 stacks, or I think it was like below 3 stacks if you have a really terrible build. And then cast speed and increased durations are more favorable.
Yeah.
So that was a very large mechanical change. Like, that's a fucking huge change to how that skill works.
Yeah.
A change that makes good sense though. Like this is a good, clever change to Blade Vortex. It solves the problem of the very rapid hitting nature and the Pathfinder interaction, while still giving people the power to circumvent the downside they've now introduced with slower hits. So right now you will be much more inclined to use an increased duration gem as a support than you would before, because, well, having it above 13 stacks all the time, that's where you see an actual buff to the skill, unless you're a Pathfinder and you rely on all the rapid hits.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is another one of those, two birds, one stone, improve performance on the server, and give, Blade Vortex some more meaningful combat situations where you're like, okay, well, I might want to itemize slightly differently and invest a little more into cast speed or duration so I can, maintain more DPS than my previous build. But at the same time, the utility was taken away with its ability to gain flash charges. I mean, it still exists and it's still good, but it's not as good. And I think they solved this problem pretty damn well.
I think if people don't embrace the more increased duration aspect of it, then people will feel like it's a nerf for general map clearing, but maybe see it as a buff when going up against bosses. Again, if you're not a Pathfinder and having relied on that.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing you to have more blades up instead of just having like a handful of blades and that's just enough to clear everything.
Yeah.
You know, having more blades will give you more flash charges and more hits essentially because 10% increased hit rate per active blade.
I think if anything would disappoint players, regardless of the abuse situations, players can enjoy having a skill that has this, machine gun amount of hits per second. Yeah. Regardless of what you were trying to do with it, and it does lose that feel, which is unfortunate. And we're also not going to see someone hit lightning thorns and instantly die, so that's sad too.
I've seen some people saying that it feels different to play now, that the power level feels somewhat like the same, but it just doesn't feel as fun anymore. And I guess that could have something to do with what you're saying here, PT. It doesn't give that machine type or machine gun type of feel.
Well, I mean, the person that you were asking that to, I mean, maybe it's because they played it for so long, when the next time they build it, it's just like, well, it's the same thing, that could be why it doesn't feel as fun.
Yeah, I think those people were comparing it to last week league when they were playing it and then now. But yeah. Clever change though, clever change. What they've done more than this is, and I mentioned that before, they've reduced the number of maximum SRS to 20 instead of, was it 50 before, or did they nerf it to 30?
Yeah, it was 50.
It was 50,
30.
okay. Yeah, it was 50 originally, right?
It was
and
50,
then 30.
Then 30, then 20.
Yeah, so they've reduced it by 10, and then to make up for that, they've increased the damage of the gem level of the SRS to compensate for that. So what we will see here is that you'll probably have more upfront damage. You'll get the damage out faster. You'll have a little less area of effect because you will obviously have less skulls covering the area. Then again, targeting mechanics and how they would seek out, I don't know how different that would be. But then what is the motivation behind this kind of nerf or change? And this is what I talked about just earlier, that this could have something to do with, improving mechanics or improving performance.
This seems like a performance improvement change.
Yeah, it seems like a performance.
Like anything more than that, but it kind of hurts because it also affects the way minions will scale off of the auras because you want as many minions with frequent hits, and when minions are spending more time traveling from monster to monster, you're going to lose a lot of AoE clear speed. And I guess they felt like they don't specify on how much they actually increased damage on the patch notes, so I have no idea if it's going to be an actual improvement, but I'm guessing it's a pretty decent sized nerf.
I would have actually expected it to be a fairly large nerf. For some reason I recalled them saying it would do a bit more damage at maximum stacks, but I don't remember exactly. But you don't have to use Spell Echo anymore. You'll be able to hit maximum stacks without Spell Echo with the Mistress of Sacrifice Haste. That Spell Echo gets switched from a no damage, just spawning SRS, giving you damage, into a more multiplier.
You could do that before as well. When they changed that from 50 to 30, you didn't really need to use Spell Echo anymore.
You would need to invest a decent amount into cast speed to do that, though.
Not really. Like if you're using Necromancer and you were using Vol Haste, things like that, then you were pretty much covered. At least the times I've been playing it, but
if you weren't using Spell Echo before, then it's not going to be much of a change. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a change for the people who did have Spell Echo in it.
To correct what we said earlier, the maximum was 50, not 30. Because I remember checking on my Nulls build and being able to achieve 50 stacks right before the patch hit. But one thing, as we have seen Summon Raging Spirits evolve over time, it used to be one of the most demanding skills for cast speed. Like when it first came out, you try to get like triple cast speed jewels, and those were like god tier. Can't imagine what it would be like, having already mirror worthy character, logging on that character a couple, I don't know, a year from now, and just seeing like, holy shit, the difference. You're like, what the hell? I'm getting 20 stacks, and my gear sucks for this build now, or it's not optimized for it. So it's quite a big change. They just kept changing the way cast speed interacts with SRS and the demand for it. Mm-hmm. But they're putting it in other things like Scorching Ray, Blight and the just castable channeling stuff.
Yeah, so I guess their mirrored gear still have some use.
Yeah, I guess they can transfer to Blight. I'm sure they'll be really happy.
You need to have a certain mentality when playing this game. You need to accept that just because something was good back then, it may not necessarily be in the future.
Well, that's the one thing you always, for the small community that plays that, people used to have all their mirrored gear with the red gem for reduced mana for their auras. Oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
That's all garbage.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, and from the way the devs presented, they're like, we want to be very careful so that, you know, when we do nerf something, that their characters are still playable. This goes on the opposite spectrum when someone has like a perfected character and then logs in his character is like not itemized correctly. It's pretty devastating, but that's probably the minority of players.
First world, probably the minority. You want to, I don't know. I think that's a comfortable one where you could say it is a minority of players.
Yeah.
Don't need it, probably. And then, sorry.
I was just going to mention the next gem, unless you had something else to say about SRS.
No, I was just going to say the Warchief was nerfed by 10% less damage, or wasn't it? Yeah. And then got a little bit of a range reduction.
Yeah, but it also had 10% weapon range added to it.
It used to be plus 16, so that was a little bit of the weapon range reduction.
Okay.
And what's your consensus is? Because I think you had the most experience with it. It's still going to be great. It's still
I was leveling with it, a little bit of a different build. Through the leveling process, you don't notice it at all. And realistically, if you think of a boss taking about 50 hits to kill it, it's going to take like 55 hits to kill it. Are you really going to notice it? Yes, it is a nerf, but not in a meaningful way.
I logged onto my Warchief Totem build just to try it out. I honestly didn't notice it at all. It's not something... If it worked before and you liked it before, you're still going to like it.
And with the totem node buffs and the totem defense inherent buffs, it's probably better overall.
Just tankier.
I'm not too sure about that fix, like the melee targeting fix they are specifically talking about. Was there an issue with it before?
It was something like with when the monster hit, went inside the totem or something, right? It was like when it got close, it had some behavioral problems. Wasn't that
I've never noticed that, but maybe.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
I mean, you're probably just clearing the screen, so you just don't notice.
Yeah.
But the next skill is Scorching Ray. It now deals 10% more damage at gem level 20, tapered down to no change at gem level 1. Again, Scorching Ray is one of the more interesting skills that was introduced. I like it a lot. I think 10% damage is great, but do I want to play it in Blight or the Breach League? Probably not. Not unless I plan on skipping a lot of the breaches. But
I'm still expecting people to come up with some cool cast when channeling stuff with it. I really think that's the intention behind it.
I mean, what do you think, PT?
I don't really know. Scorch Ray seems a bit more novelty. There's really powerful fire skills in the game, and so you're competing with some pretty intense skills like Flame Blast. But I would have seen it have much more play except the Breach League. The Breach League kind of neuters it. You need damage in 360 directions.
Yeah.
If you're doing very narrow conal damage, good luck dealing with that shit.
Oh, man.
I'm just thinking of the situations I go in. You can, within a second of being a clear map, you can have 3 commander-type mobs which don't die in a fraction of a second, so you would need to channel into them for a good 10 seconds while you're leveling unless you have insane gear, and if multiple stack up, you're just going to get crushed. I don't... Maybe on totems it won't be as bad.
There's a few guys who mentioned today when I'm playing the dual totem character, you could just use it as a supplementary skill just to reduce enemies' damage. I mean, while it may deal damage, right? Or it doesn't.
Wither totem for fire.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean,
it'll definitely see some use, but situational, not really recommended as a main skill for this type of league.
Another change that I'm very happy to see is race specters now inherently have 30% elemental resistances, which actually has a big practical implication, because typically when you're running a summoner right now, you either want to run purities to fix their elemental resistances, so elemental, the one that gives all of them, or the triple ones by themselves, and now you don't need that. You can make up for the lack of elemental resistances by picking up just the Necromancer by itself. That's 20% if you pick up one of the Ascendancies. And since minions aren't affected by player minus resistances when they get into Cruel or Merciless, then you can pretty much, easily cap it with just that, and you don't have to worry about it reducing. There is also a notable in the skill tree that gives like 16%, I think. So you don't have to get that anymore, and even if you didn't get it all, then jewels can cover minion resistances. So it's actually quite a big thing. It allows you to run a new aura instead and don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's just a huge quality of life.
Yeah. Damage buff indirectly.
I haven't played a Spectre build since Revenants were super OP, and I just remember just hating myself, having your token Spectre like just die on you, and you're having to go back to the zone and resummon it. It was such a pain in the ass, but I might give it a go again if they're more resilient and resistant to damage and dying.
Well, if you were playing back then, that would have been before the Necromancer. And the Necromancer is, 100 tons of minion life, minion damage, and 100% minion life, isn't it, on Spectres?
I think it's minion damage, isn't it? Or is it minion life as well? Is it both?
Minion resist, attack speed.
But it's the Spectre node. It's probably both minion life and damage.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it allows you to make them very tanky. Yeah, it's got a huge quality of life in terms of your jewels. The only weird thing about that change is now the minion resist jewel, which used to be a very, very valuable one with the right combinations, is essentially a shit roll now.
Yeah, it's definitely less attractive. You'll still need one of them, though, if you want to cap them.
Yeah, because you're 66. Maybe people will want to do, like, curse capped and bring them to, like, a 100 resist. I don't know. Still a little bit weird.
Like, Spectres are in no way not tanky enough right now. I had Spectres going up against the Shaper, and the Shaper couldn't kill them. It was insane. Like, if I could just run around the Shaper and have him attack the Spectres, and he literally couldn't kill them. And then again, I didn't have enough damage to kill him. So it was just like this ridiculous fight where they were beating each other up and no one was winning. But it's definitely not the tankiness of Spectres that are the issue. But you would have to invest into some elemental resistances to get them to that point. And now it's a little easier.
And you still need the disconnect resistance, or else you're just done.
Yes, that's the worst thing. That's the worst.
That brings us to the next buff with the totems and resist.
Yeah, and that's for the skill you've been using, PT. Blade Flurry.
Well, going to the totems and resistance.
Yeah, the totem. Yeah.
God damn it, lifting. Pay attention.
Well, we can do that as well. We can talk more about totems.
Okay. Lifting. Talk about totems.
I'm not gonna take the fault for this. I'm not gonna take the blame.
I know what happened. I'll yell at you guys later. But for now, lifting, do totems.
We all know I'm gonna take the blame. Okay, yeah. So totems, they got another buff. We talked a bit about them getting buffed in the skill tree. They got some resistances, physical and elemental resists, and some damage buffs. But now it seems that all totem skills by themselves, now similar to the Spectres, get 40% elemental resistances and 20 chaos resistance, I believe. And I'm pretty sure, maybe you guys can confirm this, but I'm kind of sure that totems act in a similar way as minions. They don't suffer from player minus resistances, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
They have the base stats.
Okay, excellent. So what this means is that your totems just got more tanky. There's not too much else to add to it. It's not like it was a big issue before, especially now with the change we've seen here. But yeah, It's
The
going to
more-
be nicer.
The more important thing about the gem, which I think a lot of people ended up missing, is not only are you getting the resists both on the totem and the minions, it now is a more multiplier of elemental damage from
That
10 to 19%.
that is very nice. So not only does the bottom totems by themselves get a cross buff to their resist and chaos resist, but they are also getting the damage from the support gem now. And that is really cool. I didn't notice that before PT told me that. So 19% more elemental damage with the minion and totem resist support gem. That is actually pretty significant. That's comparable to a pierce gem that gives 19% projectile damage, which I, for instance, could use for my flame totem to buff the damage. But then again, you don't get the quality bonus from the pierce, so it's actually worth picking up on.
No, it's nice. I don't think there's too much to say about it. At least they turned as more or less useless jewel or gem into something more appealing.
Yeah, I mean-
I'm inclined to use it now.
I mean, even using this jewel on a golem to make it tankier so you don't have to resummon it all the time, it may be a choice that someone used just for like a quality of life feature. But speaking of golems, golems got buffs across the board. Ziggy has released an awesome YouTube video showcasing one of the possible golem builds that you can do with these new primordial jewels. One thing is I don't really know how rare and expensive these primordial jewels are, but he's achieved some pretty cool things like killing Itsiri with it and making some pretty meaningful, potent summoner golem builds. And he did mention that the fire golem seems to have the most potential. It seemed to be the most rewarding, as its mechanics and its skills are actually pretty good. So I'd be interested to see into some more, or just seeing more golem builds in general. It's finally viable or worthwhile.
The one thing you want to keep in mind, if you have missed it, the prismatic golem jewel is obtained by vendoring the 3 non-prismatic jewels. Just so you know, it's going to get expensive.
One thing I'm interested in knowing is if they change the mechanics of the golems as well. Because I tried doing a triple, maybe a quadro golem some time ago, and the damage wasn't there. We've now seen the damage buff, and that may be why Ziggy is able to do something with the golems. But the mechanics of the golems still sucked. There was times where they would attack, then there would be some time where they just run around, and then they will attack again, and their attack pattern is too inconsistent to really work. So I'm wondering if it's simply because they've just increased the damage so much that it's now actually doable, or if it is because they've made some changes to how they actually function.
There is one of the golem jewels that has the tag, your golems are more aggressive, and that's going to make them not leash as hard to use, so that, the leash distance, if you're not familiar, is if you stand a certain distance away from your minions, they'll run away and then maybe target enemies more than what you're targeting.
I would assume that to be mandatory, at least if you're going to use this.
I think it depends on what golem you choose, because if you look at the behaviors, the ice golem, he does like an ice barrage and then a tumble or like a cartwheel. The fire golem he does a really nice AoE reave, fiery reave, and then he throws a barrage of like fire volleys or something. The chaos golem does like the chaos cascade and some tumbling. The lightning golem, he just zaps. So I think hopefully they got it tuned right so that you're incentivized to use different primordial jewels for different golems, and one works better than the other because they have reduced cooldown or reduced cooldown of their skills, so it'll allow them to be a bit more spammy. So that's kind of cool.
The problem with using different golems, if you're doing a golem build though, is that they use different support gems. So it's really hard to make that work, and that could potentially be one of the reasons why they've added damage to the minion and totem support gem, because they felt it was hard to otherwise scale the golems if you want to use more than just one. Because GMP is not going to be good on...
Right.
So
I think
I had that issue back then.
I think the general strategy is pretty much going to be stack one type of golem and maybe have one off golem as a utility one, but I think the general idea is to stack certain types so that you synergize better with your gear and your supports.
It would be
like
more
you were
fun
saying.
as well because you have the elementalists buff from the Ascendancy that doubles the effect of golems.
Yeah, but you're going to be a necromancer. There's no
Yeah.
fucking way you're going to be an elementalist.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah, I guess.
that's one of the things that the first thing I looked at. I was like, it's the only like 2 points that I would pick up in elementals that are like worth a damn, and then everything else in necromancer can be used to support the golems. But I was like, oh, that's kind of a shame.
I hate that the clay shaper is a one-handed because I almost feel like if you could use a staff, you could then have 2 types because you could get 2 six-links.
Yeah.
But there's no way you're going to give up the clay shapers for that build.
It's going to be the upgraded faded version. The clay staff.
Fuse the maces into a staff.
you just glue 2 of them together
Exactly.
and you're like,
Well, they
good.
call it pledge of fist or something.
Pledge of clay.
Pledge of clay. There you go.
Well, because if you had the staff, that would be a 6-link, right? Then you had your chest piece would be your second 6-link, and then you could have had the helm with the +2 minions, which would be a 5-link, and there would have been something to do.
Yeah, I agree.
But-
That would have been interesting. That would actually have been much more interesting.
I do think the creativity tool that you have there, it is ruined by the desire of the 6-links.
Another change we've seen is, again, totems, I'm bringing it up here, but we've seen the penalty on ranged attack totems. The penalty of that has been reduced, the attack speed, from, I think it got a 15% buff at level 1, and at level 20 it's only an effective 20 or 5% buff. So it's not something that's going to make that big of a difference, but maybe it will incentivize a little more people to try out ranged attack totems. But numerically, it's not going to make too much of a difference unless you're leveling with them. So, I don't know, what do you guys think about this? Would you be more inclined to try out some ranged attack totems?
Well, the first thing I think of when I think of range attack is the potential of using point blank. I mean, what does it do for the character mechanically? It allows them to avoid reflect and play in such a way where you can use point blank and not feel like you're going to die because, the monster hits really hard in melee range or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I would like to see some barrage totems come back. It's so rare that we've ever seen like a really solid range attack totem. And we have Siege Ballista, but that's its own skill and it does very well. It's pretty competitive, but it's more fun to like put something into a socket and then customize it, and it feels like your own skill.
It's more creative.
Yeah, it's more creative, but I don't know if these numbers are going to be good enough to justify going RAT.
I think you can do some cool stuff with like double, what's it called? The rain of fire type of arrow skill. What's it called?
Blast rain.
Blast rain, yeah. With point blank. With the ranged attack totems. It was actually already decent before. And it is a way to solve the issue of not having no fucking life over by the ranger tree. So, hide behind your totems.
I think the biggest issue comes down to the placement of where the totem nodes are, the placement of where the bow nodes. When you look at like the totem tree, and then you look at the bow tree, the Venn diagram does not look good. They are fairly separate. So when you're trying to merge them, there's a couple things you can do, but then when you look at your advantages, what do spellcasters get when they apply things to totems? Well, they get the ability to not deal with reflect, sometimes some lower costs, sometimes a bit more defense. The totems for bows, well, they already have range, they already generally have low cost because they can get their regen. They're already usually they probably prefer the ability to leech because you're well positioned for Valpact.
Yeah. And
you're not being more efficient because you actually have to stretch to the totem nodes, making yourself less investing into your crit and defense, and you might end up making yourself both weaker and squishier.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it solves the problem with the ranged attack totems.
I mean, you can use the skirmish quiver today, and you don't have to travel to that part of the tree if you just want 2 totems, right? But then again, it would be nice to have 3 then. But I think the only thing that it really does is that it maybe allows you to have a bit more safe gameplay, hiding behind the totems. But again, as you say, you lose out on the leech then. But
there's like 2 guys who play ranged attack totems, and they're like, "Yeah, we got a buff."
I know, right?
So to those 2 guys, this is your
Have
patch.
fun with it.
this is your
Here's the
time to
problem.
shine, boys.
So then, going to a nerf, Blade Flurry got a bit of a nerf. The base attack speed went from 65% more to 60%. Not a huge nerf. And then it had some area of effect both in the distance of targeting and then the area of effect of the, I want to say projectile, but the attack coverage. So 2 area of effect penalties. Have you guys played with Blade Flurry at all after the patch? Because I was doing a bunch of leveling with it.
Yeah, I've
I've
logged
only
on to my
played with
Blade
it
Flurry
before.
character.
How did you find the difference before and after?
You notice the reduced area of effect, the reach. That's noticeable, but that's really it. It's a matter of adjusting yourself to the new changes. It means that you will have a little less clear speed and reach in maps, but I mean you can make up for that. I don't
Did
think
you
it's
notice the damage at all? Like, were you able to?
no, not really. So
Well, that's if you kind of crunch the numbers, the nerf really isn't a lot. It's definitely nice that it doesn't instantly screen wide, but yeah, it's nerfed in spirit, in practicality.
Yeah.
It's a bit of area effect reduction. It's still an insanely powerful skill. Carried me through leveling.
I think that
I
is
mean-
what it needed, though. It was the area of effect that made it super fucking OP, if anything.
I don't know. Its single target damage is pretty fucking.
Yeah,
nuts
but the
still.
problem was it had single target and among the sickest clear speed or area clear before as well. Now you can argue that it has really fucking good single target, but maybe it's a little more competitive when it comes to the area clear of other skills.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys, like, how does that particular skill feel in the breach? Do you guys feel vulnerable? Like,
Oh, not
like-
at all.
not at all. You're just turning and vaporizing everything on your screen.
So I have a comparison between 2 because I'm leveling, completing an act with one character, going to the second character, completing an act. One of them's a Flame Blast build, not optimized for Flame Blast because it's going to convert to a Detonate Dead. And Blade Flurry, what I noticed about Breach in leveling, since you stun everything, you just decimate the Breach. You're
Okay.
waiting for mobs to spawn. It's fantastic, and it clears faster than Flame Blast. It destroys bosses faster than Flame Blast, and I'm just sitting here being like, well, that's cute. And I'm solo self-found using, the rustic recipe rat stash sword, being like, okay, go.
It's strong.
That's amazing.
It's definitely strong.
Yeah, it's amazing that I thought it would struggle a little bit because of the surround, the 360 surround, and get a bit zergy to where you might get stunned yourself, like interrupted or something like that. But I guess it's working out really well.
Slayer, and that means that I have the 20% cull and the extended area of effect, and that's probably helping me a lot. But as soon as I unleash, it just culls everything, and we're like, yep, next pack.
All right. Well, let's move on to some of the Ascendancy changes. The first one being Trickster. Weave of the Arcane now also reduces damage taken by 8% if you have spent a total of 200 mana recently. I like this a lot because it's different. It's a different requirement to get something that's worth something. It's like a mini fortify if you spend mana. Like, you can't bypass this. You actually have to spend 200 mana on an average of 50 mana per second. What do you guys think of this? Too good? Just right?
I think the Trickster is already really fucking good. So the number by itself is not too good, but on top of what the Trickster can provide, and it's definitely a significant buff. You already choose the Trickster because he is the more defensive approach compared to picking up the Assassin in many cases, right? And this just made him quite a lot more tanky, right? The thing is, then, do you want to pick up Weave of the Arcane over any of the other Trickster nodes.
Right, like the standalone tree, like the typical cookie cutter, does not really include Weave of the Arcane, and this kind of pushes people to get more mind over matter benefits using Mom.
This is your Kitava's Trickster.
Yeah, problem is Mom still sucks.
Yeah, but I don't build my my Kitava's Trapper with Mom. I build it on hybrid defense, and I actually prefer that. But this could be, just another tool that you could use for maybe some awesome mind over matter character later down the road. Something you definitely don't want to forget about, because 8% damage taken, or reduction in 8% damage is significant when it's all damage: physical, chaos, elemental.
I find, though, the condition is so hard compared to others. Like, if you want to pull up the Chieftain, which has like the 8% if there's a totem near you, which is throw down decoy totem, you have now like 18%. You're going to have other situations like the Inquisitor, where you just have to be there and it's 8% elemental. So the conditions are, I guess if you're spamming, it's not a horrible condition, but it's still a steeper trigger than a lot of the other Ascendancies. The second problem with it is, if you're playing a Trickster, you better be going CI in general. Because I don't find the Tricksters fantastic outside of CI. Maybe
it's pretty good. It's pretty good if you're
options.
Non-attack. Yeah, like when you go tricks, like a Trapper or a Totem character, because you can get about 6.2k life with 2.8 to 3k ES with a Trickster pretty easily, and you're very evasive. For non-leech
hybrid's
build,
not that bad.
Yeah, hybrid
Yeah.
can work.
I would do that for a non-leech. If I was leech, I'd probably want something else.
But regardless, with hybrid or CI, you want Shade Form, which is the flat energy shield. You're not skipping that. So that's 4 points of your 8 points spent.
Yeah.
Then the free movement skill gives you a ton of attack speed and cast speed. So I guess you would want that unless you're a Trapper.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so even if it's a Trapper, you want to take that. That's already 6 of your points.
I don't think it's
And
a
then it's
given,
like-
that note. It's not a given. Not compared to this. I would be inclined to pick this if I didn't benefit fully from the free movement speed ability. And the damage over time, I mean, only if you're playing a damage over time build, right?
It's good enough that it's a choice. We've the Arcane needed it.
I don't think it's going to be super popular right now, but I definitely can see this being strong down the road when skills cost a bit more, or the channeling skills get even better, or whatever. But I don't, with channeling skills, I don't think it's that hard to spend 200 mana in 4 seconds, right?
No.
Because on my 6-link Scorching Ray, I had to use the Sorrow of the Divine, which gave me 4% mana regen per second, standing in consecrated ground. Without it, I couldn't sustain it, and I had a base of 1,200 mana, so it was a little demanding on a 6-link Scorching Ray. I haven't tested the other ones though, but
yeah,
I think it's definitely achievable. But yeah, moving along to the Raider.
We'll cover the Raider and then we'll finish this up.
Yeah, Avatar of the Veil gets a 20% elemental damage buff. Avatar the Chase, 50% increase of the existing onslaught buff for a total of 100. And we have Way of the Poacher, 20% chance to gain a frenzy charge on kill on hitting a rare or unique enemy. And that one seems to be the most significant. It seems like the developers are going for a more consistent route, make it, more rewarding all the time. Are these numbers good for you guys, or what do you guys think?
The thing I'm very happy to see here is that you can generate the frenzy charges on uniques and rares now. I think that's what makes the Raider very interesting now. And I will say that the Avatar Veil 20% elemental damage buff is quite nice, but 100% increased of onslaught right now is pretty significant too. It doubles your onslaught, right? And then you have numbers that go from 20% for an effect to happen to 100% to happen on a kill. That is just, it's a permanent effect pretty much, except for on bosses. But then again, you'll use your wall breach, right? Then you have that.
The problem with the onslaught is the on kill is only for 3 seconds, and while you're doing like your general map clear, you're still going to want onslaught for boss or something, unless you can kill every boss in under 3 seconds.
But what if you use it with the flask, silver flask?
Yeah, using the silver flask, I think, is what you'll want to do. I just kind of wish the Ascendancy would allow you to drop the silver flask more comfortably.
But isn't I don't have the skill tree in front of me. But don't you get increased duration of onslaughts via one of
the minor nodes?
Yeah, 40%.
Yeah, 40% increase replaces the attack speed.
So the problem is with the 3 seconds, you're buffing it up to 4 seconds, but the flask is.
There's already an Ascendancy class that allows you to drop the onslaught, and that's like the Slayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it just makes that second one a little bit awkward, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
it's kind
to
of
me,
this wasted node that you go for the better node.
The Raider seems like the token Flicker Striker, like the best one. You know, that's the problem with Flicker Strike. When you have such high HP mobs, you just feel like shit when you just flicker and it's still standing, you know? You're like, oh, and then you have to like manually frenzy. That's a huge quality of life for Flicker Strike. On the same note, you're playing a Raider, so generally speaking, you're probably not going to have enough life, and therefore, you know, Flicker's worst enemy not only is the lack of frenzy charges is volatiles. Like you're guaranteed to take the volatile if you flicker and kill something. So you know, kind of pushes you towards CI, which Raider can do. She could do it pretty damn well, like the Pathfinder did before in our previous meta. I don't know about you, PT, but like every single third build that was requested for me to audit was a Raider build. So many people want to play Raider. It's just like, hey, make Raider this way. And it's just like, it's pretty universal. You could do a lot of different things.
I have this really creative build, Hedgie. I want you to check it. It's Crit, Dagger, Blade, Flurry, Raider.
You just copy paste that link, or you just make an exclamation command for it. You're just like, there you go.
Use it with Reeve.
I think Raider is fantastic for people who don't want to put in the work to sustain the frenzy, because either they want to get some certain really budget options, or they're lazy and don't want to do other things. I find it weird when like bows want to use Raiders, because I'm like, you have a bow, you have frenzy skill, use that.
You know, we can see that they pushed the Trickster a little bit, and then we have the Raider that got pushed a lot because it was so underwhelming. And I'm kind of surprised that we didn't see any Scion changes, because I feel like she's another one that needs a lot of attention or something.
Scion doesn't exist. Close your eyes. And
I think I saw on Reddit that maybe it was Chris who said they were working on Scion changes right now, but as in it being a priority right now.
Wasn't his comment? It was sometime in the future between now and the heat death of the
I saw that as well.
Good.
It's gonna happen sometimes, basically.
Yeah, his comment was like, it's gonna happen. It might be done for 2.5, might be done for the launch, might be done for 3.0, might be later. It was just like, that's
so we're getting this. So we're getting the channeling skills treatment.
Yeah, there's gonna be a change eventually.
Poor Scion.
All right, so we wanted to talk about a couple other things, but we're out of time, and this is where we're going to be closing it. So the following week, we will be doing a lot of the unique discussion once we have the full list, going through, talking about maybe some build things we can do, and just the dump of uniques that we had, because there's over 50 uniques in this league. So thank you guys for joining the Lioneye's Watch podcast. For those who didn't catch the beginning, it'll be posted on Hegemony's YouTube channel. And for those watching on YouTube, you can catch us live on Sundays. There's a timer in the video description, assuming we didn't fuck it up. So keep in mind, if you do want to submit your build for the build of the week or a hideout, you just need to get a hold of me, send me a message however you can, and we can put it on a bit of a master sheet. The builds need to have video content and be updated for the 2.5 league. And there's going to be a PvP event on Saturday. Once again, timer in the description. If there's anything you want to see or have announced, just let us know and we'll try to incorporate it into the future podcasts. So, thanks for your time. Rest well, Exiles. Enjoy your evening.